but that's okay. We'll still cover it. Take advantage of the LADWP rebate program. So just going over this is kind of changing the irrigation as the garden matures is going back to that first lecture, how we saw things on like a year by year basis, and talking about how the irrigation changes via per year. And just as a recap of last class, because this is irrigation part 2, we've kind of talked about the different factors that contribute to like an optimal irrigation event, and how they are very interconnected, all the different factors, and kind of complex and affecting on each other. So there is no perfect formula, and it's really just about trying to use the best practices to make a good call, which kind of goes back to Eduardo's point, which is like, you can tweak this stuff. There isn't a formula and like a right answer. Usually it's just like, what's the best case scenario I can do with my limitations. Also, some points that we talked about was replicating the wet winters, especially that first year. We want to, when they're getting established, we want to make sure we're like replicating not only the natural cycle of our seasons, but also like a nice wet winter for that first year of establishing, and watering well those first establishing years, and gradually reducing the irrigation until they're established, which means that they can take long stretches of time without water. And then, we talked about that most dry adapted natives can survive a summer without water once they're established, but they also, many of them look a bit better with a kind of infrequent soak in summer. So that was just kind of a general thing. And then we talked about where you plant the plant matters, which is kind of like right place, right plant type of stuff. So first year, it's really about getting that root system developed. And we know that with any plant, native or not, the roots are bound by that container that it arrived in. So the root system is not extensive yet. And they have that really loose soil, that they come in. So the first few months, you really want to encourage it to grow into that surrounding soil. And you're going to be doing more frequent waterings at that point in the plant's kind of life. And that first winter, you really want that regular soil moisture. Again, you want like a good wet winter kind of for that first winter, again, to try to encourage this extensive root growth. And you definitely want to be vigilant in monitoring young plants, especially with temperature and the wind and amount of rain. So rainfall, we talked about, if there's a lack of rainfall, you want to be supplementing the appropriate amount that would be equivalent to a good wet winter, so like 15 inches and plus. And then you want to make sure you're vigilant about any kind of extreme temperatures, like a heat wave or like a Santa Ana winds event, and getting plants, especially those young ones, getting them watered. I just lost my train. Oh, watered before those kind of heat events. During year 2, so we're kind of reducing the irrigation frequency. So during the years with normal precipitation, you want to reduce the irrigation frequency that second summer, but still be applying a nice soak. So the frequency is reduced, but you want to still be wetting it the top 18 inches in one irrigation event. So you always want to encourage this deep watering, kind of the life of the plant. You're just lessening the frequency. This kind of goes to always apply the water slowly so that it penetrates in the soil and does not run off. That's a kind of always situation. Be mindful all years. The second year is a good time to find like an indicator plant, something that acts as like the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the garden. This is like usually some kind of tender perennial that maybe starts to wilt before the rest of the garden does. That might be something like Irrigation glauca or even Sphaerolaceae. Those ones can tend to wilt before other plants. And they can just be, it's just a way to kind of, so you're not just relying on just your schedules, just relying on a date. You kind of have some cues in your garden that will tell you like, hey, it is a bit dry. Or you could also use like the red flowering buckwheat or even salvias. Their leaves tend to kind of fold like a hard-shelled upside down taco. They kind of fold in on themselves when they're drought stressed. So they can also be that. Just obviously picking an indicator plant that makes sense, not one that goes dormant in the summer or something like that. And then let's see, what does this last thing say? In low precipitation years, or during drought, you'll need to adjust the water schedule to better mimic what plants should be receiving. So again, you're going to be supplementing water whenever to make up for whatever's lacking in rainfall, especially in those first 2 years, because those are very much the establishing years. Is there a little note? No. So following the strategy for infrequent deep watering, you're continuing to reduce the water frequency. You might do deep watering while you're there servicing the garden, just so you can see that everything's functioning. This is a good time too, where you are at this point in the garden's life, you can probably start doing these kind of quick spritzes, sprinkles. Again, these are like refreshing sprinkles, you know, that are like 2 minutes on your irrigation system, just to kind of wet the garden, clean the leaves off. This is not a watering event. This would not be considered irrigating your garden, not part of the, you know, the deep watering. This would just be to kind of refreshen the garden. So year 3 is basically just kind of keeping up with the, with the continued reducing frequency of irrigation. Year 4 is mostly about monitoring your irrigation system. At this point, your garden is, you know, considered established, or at least well on its way to being established. And this would be a time where you are looking for like repairs and monitoring whatever, and your garden should, you kind of would be in the routine. You'd have your routine of what the irrigation schedule looks like at this point. You know what I mean? Because you don't have a bunch of immature plants. You have a bunch of established plants with hopefully more extensive root systems. So just, you know, checking for broken parts, your slow leaks, adjusting the schedule, all these things. Again, looking for mineral residue buildup, that's a thing. Checking filters. Also, that could be when you start either adding more emitters as the plants get larger. You know, maybe you might add more emitters around, or even move them out. So like that, like Jill's example, where hers are 6 inches away. As that plant's you know, vegetative area gets larger, you would move that out to more their root zone, which corresponds with its drip line that we talked about last class. So that might be something you're doing, or even just making sure the pop-ups, if you have like pop-up irrigation, sprinkler heads, making sure they're actually, just making sure in general your whole system's functioning the way you plan for it to or want it to. So sometimes as plants get larger, they start to block a pop-up's watering path, and you kind of inadvertently create like a dry spot. So just making sure that everything's kind of working the way you think and want to. If you add plants, you definitely are going to have them on like a separate watering schedule until they're established, right? So we've talked about this, but usually the kind of rule of thumb is 3 to 5 times, you put down on a new native 3 to 5 gallons per 1 gallon of pot size. So that 1 gallon size pot that they come in, if you're planting a 5 gallon pot, it's 3 to 5 times 5, you know? So that's the amount of gallons you want to put down. And that initial installation, you want to water it really well, up to like 10, you know, you could do 10 gallons even. You want to water it really well in that first time. That could also be included like watering the hole itself, but definitely consider watering it 3 to 5 gallons per gallon pot size. Okay, so smart controllers. Okay, interesting little factoid. Wait, let me see if I've got all my pages lined up. So residential outdoor water use in the United States accounts for more than 9 billion gallons of water every day. And that's mainly for landscape irrigation, which is estimated that as much as 50% of that 9 billion gallons a day is wasted due to overwatering or, you know, inefficiencies in your irrigation system. And the best practices that we've talked about and potentially smart controllers can address this issue of overwatering and waste by watering the plants when they need it, right? You know, this is like kind of what we've been talking about. So yeah, this is like 4.5 billion gallons of wasted potable water a day is insane. But talking about smart controllers and how they can, well, I guess I'll just go back a little bit with smart controllers. You know, there's been smart technology that's older than the current smart technology. And the older stuff used to be kind of like basically just an automatic timer that had like 7-day intervals for watering. And they really would err on the side of overwatering because our landscapes were more dominated by lawns, which can take a kind of, basically they're less susceptible to being overwatered. You know, you basically are watering a lawn every week minimum. And so our systems and smart controllers at the time kind of reflected that. But now systems are starting to either have longer intervals between, so not just on a 7-day cycle, allowing for longer intervals between, but also some of these smarter ones take into like pull in weather data, like current live weather data, and adjust the timing of your watering cycles to whatever, you know, the weather, you know, if it's raining or something. So those can obviously be very helpful. So benefits would be obviously may save you water. That's the kind of main takeaway. And they also, a lot of them, there's so many. So I'm just saying generals, not all of them can do this, but some you can program in the local watering restrictions. So say it's the LA DWP one where you cannot water from 9 to 4, you just program that in and it just avoids that watering time. And you can also set up seasonal adjustments. So that obviously there's a lot there. The remote access part is probably the coolest thing, I guess, about them. It's, you know, you don't have to be at the site to adjust the irrigation system. You can do it from the phone, and that just makes it, you know, that's why we have cell phones, right? The convenience and ease. So obviously no irrigation when it's actively raining. If it's actively raining, it'll just you know, pause that watering event that you had programmed in and wait until a time period when it makes sense. You know, it depends on each one. Sometimes they actually take in the amount of inches that it rained and subtract it, and others just kind of like do it on a different day when it's not raining. Possibility that, oh yeah, so also there's this possibility that, you know, as people become more interested in smart home devices, that integrating smart controllers for their irrigation system, that just is an obvious thing, I guess, of people like early adopter folks, right? Early adopters of technology. Many cities and states and water districts require them. And then this is kind of the future. I mean, I have to say, I'm kind of a Luddite myself. I don't actually have much experience with smart controllers myself. And whether I like it or not, this is definitely a thing that's happening. And like wireless flow meters are coming, which would help you. I totally understand that, though I'm slow to adopt technology, I understand the benefits of them. But potentially these would work with whatever wireless flow meter you have on your house or whatnot. So clearly those are the benefits. Some of the drawbacks would be that for folks like me or homeowners or maintenance crews or whatnot, folks that have to deal with your irrigation system might not be adept at using smartphone apps. So you would have to be, or someone would have to be responsible for actually running the system, and you'd have to be communicating with the owner if they, for example, didn't know how to run their irrigation system, which there are many people that don't, and there's many people that do, but anyway, that might be an issue. Timer controllers also, they increasingly are becoming more complex, and they require more upfront programming, which is kind of a good thing because you can be more nuanced, but it also means the complexity of it just makes it like less user-friendly, right? You know, less accessible for everyone. There may be certain limitations in field applications where it just doesn't make sense. One of those would be things like a lot of times they need access to the internet or like some kind of wireless internet connection or the cloud or whatever it may be. So that might be a limitation if your garden doesn't have that kind of setup. Irrigation problems. So there's kind of just basically two. It's either doing too much or doing too little. Overwatering natives is like a really common mistake, especially with folks new to native plants. Some of the signs that you would see if something's being overwatered, aside from the soil being wet, would be there is wilting that could happen. So you see wilting despite the presence of soil moisture. And that's kind of a really important reason why you should always check your soil before you water, or before you, even if you see wilting, that doesn't mean that you necessarily need to water, right? So always check the soil moisture, check it 2 to 3 inches down, and make sure that it's not wet at that depth, because you could be potentially overwatering, especially if you're seeing wilting and wetness in the top, 2 to 4 inches. And also I think I mentioned this last class, but sometimes you'll see another thing you might see is that heat response, that some plants kind of wilt in the late afternoon, but they recover by morning or even evening. And that can be also, like, some people think they see that and just immediately water. But again, making sure you're checking the soil before you water, because sometimes these are just responses, the natural responses that the plants are having to like a hot day, basically. Potentially brown or yellowing leaves at unexpected times of year. So especially if you have like another garden you're caring for that has the same species, and you're not seeing the brown yellowing leaves at this time of year, that might be an indication that something's up. You know what I mean? It could also be underwatering, but a lot of the overwatering, underwatering symptoms look similar, except for the fact that one would be very dry and one would be moist. So and also with overwatering in general, you're usually kind of like creating conditions where you're slowly kind of rotting the plant. So when you have so this would be not a symptom, but an actual evidence. When you're kind of creating these wet conditions, you might see root rot, which would kill the plant. And the way you would know that was root rot is a lot of times it's like a dead plant, but when you pull it out, it comes right out of the soil. And it's just a stick with like very little root material. It's just like a wet stick, like end, you know what I mean? And that's because there was water at the crown and it rotted there. So root rot can be evidence of overwatering. And obviously there's nothing to do about it once that's happened. Replant, stop overwatering. But also, I guess this would be really extreme, but like anaerobic smells, that's a sign there's not oxygen in the soil, which we saw in the soils class. You need oxygen and water. And if there's not oxygen in the soil, it's basically waterlogged, and any kind of bad smells usually is a sign of decomposition, which is not what you want for like a living plant. So underwatering, I guess just an important kind of distinction is drought versus summer. So drought is a prolonged period of lack of natural rainfall, which would be breaking from our kind of usual pattern. And low to no summer rainfall is a consistent pattern. So less than an inch from May to November, that's just summer. That's not a drought. That's just a normal kind of summer, where and native plants are adapted to that summer pattern, right? They're not suffering from the summer's natural low rainfall, even though they might look kind of crispy by like late October, or that's still part of their adaptation. A drought, though, when it occurs, is going to stress the plants because they're not able to like just resist a lack of rainfall forever. So think back to like 2016 years of rainfall. We were having several years of very low rainfall, which happens in our rainy season, not in summer. And that is actually when you start to see like underwatering, maybe potentially with plants. So again, natives they are drought tolerant, but they're not drought proof, so a drought and summer are different, but just want to make that distinction. And some of the symptoms you might see with underwatering would be, some of them actually are, like I said, a lot like overwatering, but also like kind of the foliage, like losing its like healthy luster. I mean, I know that sounds like very ethereal, but it is kind of like it loses that that kind of healthy shine that you expect. Maybe the leaves start to kind of become like a little bit smaller. You might see the new growth is like a smaller kind of leaf. Maybe the leaves are wilting, and it doesn't, again, we talked about this, if the leaves or stems are wilting and they're not returning back to like a more erect stem when it cools down in the day, that might be a sign, especially if you're feeling dry soil, it's not recovering from wilting and the soil is dry. Leaf roll would be, again, that like rolling leaf thing that happens. Premature drop, if the leaves just drop kind of early or suddenly, or even if they don't drop, but they all dry up and just stay on the plant, that can be a sign. Leaf scorch, like the crispy like sun blasted zone that gets crispy after it's been kind of like, they literally get sunburned sometimes. And then anyway, let's see what else. Also could just be like no new growth, kind of this failure to thrive. It's like been kind of yellowish for a long time and never kind of put on this like kind of that green color that happens when a plant really takes. But yeah, those are some of the signs you could see with underwatering. And underwatering, typically younger plants are more susceptible to underwatering than our older plants, because the more established plants, as we talked about, have these more extensive root systems, so they're way less susceptible to underwatering. That should make sense with what we've talked about. So typically underwatering you're going to see more commonly with the younger plants. Okay, state of California water use regulations. Talking about these. Let's see. So, as many of you know, California has a bunch of different regulations that are meant to reduce water use, but they've also created a bunch of different, or potable water use throughout the state. And they've also created a bunch of resources that aim to reduce the potable water use. So we're going to talk about a few of these kind of resources and programs. One being WUCLs, which is kind of like a plant data one. CIMMYs we're going to talk about, which is weather data, and then these kind of ordinances that help create water budgets. So WELO and MAWA, I will get into those. On the left here, I'll go over this map in another slide, but it's a very cool one from CIMMYs. Also, I don't know that's how you pronounce it. I just pronounce it that way, the CIMIS. I like the way I say it, so I stick with it. But I've never been corrected, so who knows? But yeah, this is evapotranspiration rates for all of California. And I will talk about evapotranspiration in like 2 slides from now. But suffice it to say, this is a super awesome map that divvies up the whole state into kind of different zones. Just going with WUCLs real quick. WUCLs is the water use classification, what is it? Of landscape species. And essentially, it's like kind of like a database or like a catalog of over 3,500 species of plants that you find commonly in the California landscape. It's natives and non-natives. So it's and it's basically like the watering irrigation needs for those plants. And the plants are all divided into, you can basically look up any plant, well, any plant that's within their 3,500 and find the water needs for these plants. And you can see here at the top, the categories are the 4, that's divided into 4 different categories: high water needs, moderate, low, and very low. And if you look on the right-hand side, you can see like the examples. So like turfgrass, clearly high water need plant, kangaroo paws or lantana, moderate, lavender, rosemary is considered low, and then ceanothus and Arctostaphylos fremonodendron, our native plants, are considered very low. So these ratings, these high, moderate, low, very low, are relative to their region. So where you plant the plant is what's going to affect where you plant what plant changes its irrigation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And the regions are usually based on that CIMMYs map that I just passed over and I'm going to go back to. But essentially, again, you'll see this percentage of ETO at the top there. That's ETO is evapotranspiration. I'll get to it, but essentially the higher the ETO, the higher the water needs. This is like for this point. Is there something else I wanted to add to that? Hydrozones. I think that's it. So yeah, WUCLs is basically, oh yeah, so I was gonna just say this high, moderate, low, it's relative to the region. So you might have like maybe a moderate plant on the coast where it's, you know, cooler, less evapotranspiration, might have might be considered moderate on the coast, but high inland or in the desert. So it does very much matter where the plant is and what region it is. These numbers are not, they don't stand still, right? What is the word for that? They are dynamic with where they're planted. Okay, so CIMMYs, I think this is like my favorite. I don't know why, I think CIMMYs is the coolest thing. Drew, you raised your hand. Do you want to go for it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to delve into this detail for this class, but I'm interested in what the percent ETO actually means again. Is
Yeah,
that the amount of
I'm
the
going to go
plant?
over ETO right now. And then
Oh,
after I do it,
great.
then raise your hand again and tell me if it doesn't cover it.
Super. All
Okay.
right, awesome. Thank you.
So CMES, this like California Irrigation Management Information System, mouthful, is part of Water Use and Efficiency Branch, part of Department of Water Resources. It was developed in 1982 by Department of Water Resources and the University of California, Davis. And it was designed to assist irrigators in managing their water resources more efficiently. So kind of moving into this map a bit and kind of going over ETO or evapotranspiration. So we talked about transpiration last class, which is the moisture lost through the leaves of the plant. So think of evapotranspiration as this compound word, or sorry, evapotranspiration, ETO, it's the same thing. So it's a compound word, evapo for evaporation, which is the loss of moisture through the soil. And then the transpiration is the loss of moisture through the leaf. So that's kind of all the water, all the water that's being lost in the system, right? In this kind of situation. And it really is synonymous with your irrigation demand, which is kind of like what you need to replace in the soil for your plant to uptake so that it's not stressed. And it really depends, the ETO very much depends on the plant and the location. Because like I was saying, in these inland or in these warmer places, the ETO is higher. And ETO is basically, it's usually for a reference crop. So we're talking, these numbers are based off this one reference crop, which is usually a really well-watered, like cool season turf grass. So this is like a kind of high water needing thing. And so that's why, just to kind of go back to what Drew was saying, the percentage would be the percentage that's percentage of the ETO for that site would be like, what is the watering percentage that you need to water that cool season grass? How is that plant related to it? So I'm not explaining that very well, but let me go back and see if I can. So that's 70 to 90% for a turf grass is 70% of this one species of reference crop that they're using. So if you were watering, say, that exact same species that they use as their reference crop, it would just be 100%. Does that make sense? No, I'm seeing like a silence. Okay, so essentially, oh wait, maybe I didn't explain this part, which is ETO is the water lost, right? So it's in inches because it's for irrigators. They talk in these precipitation rates, which is inches, rainfall is in inches, irrigation is in inches. So when we're talking about evapotranspiration, which is what is lost, we're talking about inches of water that's lost either through the plant or the soil. So it's about, like I said, what you need to put back in to replace that. But these numbers have to be based off of one plant because there's, like I said, they're different for all plants. So they base it off of a plant that's off this one reference crop, which I don't know the species, but they base it off just one and they get all the numbers for it. And then every plant after that, like the low watering ones, like we had the very low water plant on the WUCL's list, they would be a percentage of that because they're only being watered a percentage of that one crop that's being well watered. Does anyone want to kind of like chime in and be like, that makes no sense, or help me understand what you don't understand?
So Claire, in other words, if a plant was rated at high water, I think that's the highest it goes, it's high,
Yeah,
right?
high, yeah.
In a given zone within the CMES system, and which means it's up to 90%. It requires up to 90% of the water that reference crop, which is more or less a worst case scenario, needs.
Yes.
You're basically you're just as good to plant that really water hungry reference crop in that area, and that's what you're trying to avoid.
I'm not sure if you're trying to avoid it. It's just like it's just having a number to start from. So we have to have like a reference crop so that we can then take percentages off of it for all our other crops, which say it's a low watering crop like the native plants, then we're only watering 10% of that that evapotranspiration for the one crop. Because again, like it's kind of the worst case scenario, it's the high water need thing, the cool season turf grass. So that's your like upper limit. And then you can just take percentages off of that to figure out your other ones.
Right. Yeah, I'm personally tracking, I think.
Okay. If not, we'll come back to it. We can talk about it at the end too, if it's not making sense. Or yeah, we'll just try to move ahead. You don't actually have to know the percentage thing. I think Drew is like just clarifying that, but that's not necessary for understanding the concept, I think. But maybe that's just me. Anyway, so again, ETO is going to depend on the plant and the region. And these numbers here in this little graph, this chart here, are for that reference crop. And they're inches per month, which you can see the January to December. That's the inches that are lost in these different color-coded regions, which the numbers correlate to the colors, and you can see it's all different colors, the state. And then on the end, it's the annual, so it's the total water lost. So CIMMYS also manages these, yeah.
Which zone is Theodore Payne?
You guys are just like doing, I feel like it's a good lecture if you guys are like asking the question right before I get there. So here's, this map is zoomed in of that version. And wait, before I get there, there's also, CIMMYS also has these automated weather stations that give you real-time data, the 145 that's saying here, and then clearly the graphs. And here, the zoomed in picture you can see of Los Angeles County. And I just want to say, so there's like 7 different ETO zones that are here in Los Angeles County. So you have 1, which is the number of this like purple one, 4 is the blue purple, 2, you can't even see the color, but it's like here in this coastal zone. 6 is this like aqua, 9 is green. And Theodore Payne, I've looked it up before. I wish I put like a pointer here, but I didn't. But it's like it is in this 14 beige zone. So that being said, I think my next slide is, yes. Okay. So what was the number? It was 14 is Sun Valley, which is Theodore Payne. And I think I highlighted it. Yeah. So we're talking here, again, you can see the monthly water lost. So if we had that reference crop, which is the high water guy grass, it would be losing this much water on average. This is a general, just average monthly. This is not accurate to like this year or something, but it's the average. So you'd be losing 1.5 inches. You'd need to replace that if you wanted to keep that grass plant not stressed and happy, right? And so you can see this also tracks the evapotranspiration goes up in July. Like, and that should make sense for you guys because it's getting hotter, it's losing more water, the plant and the soil. And that makes sense. In July, we have the highest value. And then at the end here, you got 57 inches total for the year for Sun Valley. That's what we're saying. So if I go to, that's just that average general graph, right? Or chart. But you can also find the real-time one based off of the actual weather station that's closest to your area, which in this case, if we're doing Sun Valley, it would be 216. That's just the numbers they give them. They're not in any obvious numbering pattern, but let's just compare. So this is going to be, these we're going to give you live data, or, well, I guess not live, but current data. And so if I go to this link here, which is the CIMMYS website for their weather stations, and it is in your outline, it's under the resources. If I go to this, and I go to 216, because we said it was weather station 216, right? That one is the closest. And they have up here, you can go to stations and they have the map and you can find the weather station that makes sense for your area. But here we have 216, Arletta here. And then it has the option to create a limited hourly report or daily or monthly. I want monthly so that we can compare it to that other chart, the average. And you press run report there that I just did in the right-hand corner. And then it thinks for a little bit, I think, hopefully. If it doesn't come up, I already have it pulled up, but I would like it to come up just for like effect. Okay, so this is kind of small, but so this is it goes back 12 months. So it's a year, but it's not, 2020. It goes back 12 months from the date or from the time period you're looking at, right? So we have May 2020 until April 2021, 12 months here. So this is our yearly. Here in this column is the ETO. And they have these Ks and Ms as like their legend says, like some of the daily values are missing or whatever, but just ignore this for now, just for the sake of this. And we also have the total precipitation in this column here. So you can see 5.8 in May, and it's, trucking along. ETO, these are again in inches. The total for 2020 was 43. And then we move into 2021 and we got 2.8, blah, blah, we got all these, and we have 16. So both of these combined would give you your total for the year, right? So comparing that, if I do 43 plus 16, that's like 59 inches. So comparing that to our 57 inches, that was our average for kind of the same region, it kind of checks out, right? So if you wanted an accurate, ETO for whatever reason, you would go to this, and it does have it by daily as well. And just as like a note here with precipitation, you can see evapotranspiration, again, for this well-watered cool season turf grass is 2.53 in December, and we only got 1.4 inches of rain. So again, you got to make up that difference if you're trying to keep this cool season turf grass well-watered and happy. And the same going down below, you can see January, 2.8 inches were lost, and the total precipitation was 2.28. So it wouldn't be enough for that turf grass, but like going back to Drew's point, if this was a native plant, potentially that's like, 10% of this total evapotranspiration rate, then this water would be enough for your natives in the month of January. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I think that's the main takeaway from this. So going back, I think I do this. Yes, okay, going back to, okay, so yeah, the point is just you can use either the graph that, the chart that kind of is the average, or you can use the actual weather data. I just want you guys to know what the resources are so you can use them however you see fit. I think they're great. I love it. I love the CIMMYS map and everything. But moving forward, we have WELO, which is a statewide ordinance that essentially its aim is at promoting landscape irrigation water efficiency. And some of its kind of points are increasing water efficiency standards for new and retrofitted landscapes, establishing water waste prevention for existing landscapes, and using water efficiently without waste by setting a MAWA, or a maximum applied water allowance, which I will get into. And it's like the upper limit for water use for a site. And then lastly, encouraging local agencies and water purveyors to use like economic incentives to promote efficient water use, which would be stuff like the rebates that we're going to get into. MAWA, so again, maximum applied water allowance. This is the upper limit for water use. And I just said that, but the idea is to reduce water to its lowest practical amount, but making sure you have a set max so you know what would be the max. And this is something that is required for new constructions and renovations that are professionally installed, that are larger than 2,500 square feet, that require like a building or landscape permit or some kind of design review. So MAWA is something that is required. And I'm just going to go into like I think it's simple, but who knows, kind of a simple MAWA calculation. And this is just their formula. And the reason I'm kind of like harping on with the math is that I think this is a really helpful formula to have and understand, because you can kind of fit it to other irrigation situations, not just MAWA. So even if you're like, oh, I'm never going to work with MAWA, this is just an interesting way to calculate irrigation needs for an area. So that's why I want you guys to kind of at least be familiar with it. But here's the formula. MAWA, it's in gallons. ETO, so we get that number either from the graph or the weather station, which is in inches. 0.62 is a conversion factor, which is just a constant you're always going to use. as long as you're putting in those, what is it called? Inches and all the things. Anyway, so the conversion is from inches per year to gallons per year. That's where it's converting it. And the ETAF is just this kind of coefficient. It's an adjustment factor that WELO has established of 0.55 for residential projects and 0.45 for non-residential. So you just pick one and use that. And this is what they use. But this could be a different factor for other formulas if you're not doing MAWA. That's why but anyway, back to MAWA. And then the landscape area would just be the square footage. So this example I'm making up, we're going to use the ETO that we found on the chart, which was 57. You could easily put in the 59 also for Sun Valley. Let's say it's a residential property with a giant square foot, 3,000 square feet, landscaping area, and you just plug those things in, right? So 57 times 0.62 times 0.55, because we say it's a residential project, and then times square footage, and that's the total gallons. This 58,311 would be the gallons per year that are maximum water allowance. And I think this can be really helpful, this calculation, for also potentially calculating, well, you can break this down further. You could get it the gallons per square foot, dividing it by the square footage, or per smaller time increment, like per month, or per, you can break that down further, right? Or just doing the ETO not of the year, but of that month, to get your watering schedule for a site. So this could potentially be very helpful in other sites. Also, I could see this being used, say you are irrigating with a rain tank or something, like a large cistern that you collected water from, like figuring out, okay, when I get a good rain year, I've got this many gallons. How long will that get me in irrigating this landscape? So that's why I'm harping on around about the formula. Again, I can't get into it really further, but this coefficient would change. Sorry, not 0.62. The ETAF would change based off of, not for MAWA, this would be the same, but outside of MAWA, in a different situation, if you were just trying to figure out the irrigation for your native plants, you might put it at 0.1 or 0.3, because the native plants are 0.3%, 10 to 30% of this crop factor. If I'm losing you, don't worry. It's not super important. I'm just kind of like harping on about something I think is interesting. But hopefully you understood at least the MAWA formula if you just get how it works. And then again, I got that 57 in case it's not clear from the chart here, but you could have easily looked it up in that same website at CMES that I just showed you. So just so it's clear, that's how we got those things. Let me just check. I'm going to go a little bit longer, guys, and then we'll have a break, and then Martha will introduce all the rebates. This is just the last bit I have, which is when we kind of talk about the opportunities for kind of extras and professional consulting. A lot of these are related to the rebates, which if you have questions about, just wait until Martha talks about them, because I'm just kind of skimming them. But an important thing to remember is if you are installing things for a client that are going to be for a rebate, make sure to save the receipts for them so they can submit them to the water district to get that rebate. So make sure you have receipts for all those things if you are going to be installing stuff that utilizes the rebates. One of these could be one of these kind of professional things would be, sorry, I had a little, okay, could be irrigation controller replacement. So we kind of talked about this, the smart controllers. People would be down to, lots of folks want to update theirs, and this would be a great opportunity to do that. And you just kind of charge for the equipment, the labor, the programming of it, setting it up so it makes sense with whatever irrigation system they have. And then you could even do like a small service fee or subscription service for ongoing kind of like adjustments or monitoring of their irrigation system. The rebate, I believe, is for the controllers, the irrigation controllers. The current rebate is like $200. So you would make sure to charge that so that you're actually getting, they're getting that money back. So make sure to charge enough to get that rebate. Sprinkler rebate work would be, LADWP has a rebate for conversion of old sprinkler spray heads. So those high volume, higher precipitation rate sprinkler heads, to a conversion to new rotator heads on irrigation systems. There is a minimum of at least 30 heads. And you want to make sure that you are providing an invoice that has the model numbers and the quantities of whatever qualifying products you're installing. A clarification here, this conversion of rotator to rotator heads is just for, it's for people that basically have an old irrigation, sprinkler irrigation system that they want to convert to water saving nozzles. This does not, this only works for that. It's not part of the turf replacement rebate. So if somebody is like applying for the turf replacement rebate and they have a sprinkler system, they can only convert it to drip or remove it completely and just hand water. Those are the only two irrigation systems that are accepted by the LEDWP rebate program for the turf replacement program. I don't know if that's a mouthful, but this is specifically for basically someone who wants to keep their lawn, but just wants to, you know, potentially save water, or maybe somebody who doesn't qualify for the turf replacement program and they have sprinklers and they just want this system. WELO, like I said, you can, MAWA calculations are required for these certain retrofitted and new constructions of landscapes. So in the case of that, you could potentially complete the MAWA calculations for, you can offer that to clients, like do that for them. And like I said, like this could be a calculation for compliance with WELO, but also you can calculate at smaller intervals and, you know, use this. Basically, if you have access to the design or you made the design, you could very easily kind of create custom reports for with this MAWA calculation. So you could kind of like get it down to even smaller hydro zones, calculate the appropriate watering for those areas, or maybe create the irrigation watering schedule based off of these calculations. So and also this calculation is really similar to calculating runoff stuff. If you're doing, I'm really stuck on this formula, but it's also can be really very similar to calculating rain runoff for different projects. So before I go too long about MAWA, lastly, rainwater garden grading. So rain garden grading, that is so hard to say for me. Capturing rainfall or artificial irrigation in and throughout the landscape using basins, swales, berms, and native plants. So these kind of water capturing features that you know, use the landscape or topographical changes in the landscape to move and capture water in the landscape as opposed to letting it run off is kind of a specialized thing, but definitely doable. And you guys do have in your workbook a handout that's called, wait, I gotta see it. It's called, I think it's called constructing and maintaining a rain basin. That kind of gives you a kind of step-by-step on how to do it. You can get much further than that outline goes, or that little handout goes, but I think it's a good starting place. It also has the runoff calculation in there, which is really similar to the MAWA calculation. Anyway, this is definitely something you could charge for, because this is having a water capturing feature is required with the turf replacement rebate. So there's a lot of different requirements. One of them is having some kind of water catchment feature, and those include basins, swales, rain gardens, even I believe rain barrels count for those. Martha will correct me, I'm sure. But these are all water catchment features, and those that count towards the rebate program. So this is definitely a service. I've definitely done this on several gardens because people don't know how to do it, or they don't want to do it, and they want to get the rebate and want to have the plants, but like having to like dig out their yard just doesn't sound like fun. So definitely a service you could provide. One little notation is the plants within a rain garden have kind of special placement needs. So making sure you think about like the lowest part in the garden, the rain garden, for example, this picture on the left where there's all the water is, this is going to be subject to seasonal flooding, like this example, like the water, if there's a plant here in the bottom, it's getting underwater for some period of time before this infiltrates. And so think of that low part of the basin as being, you know, where there's the most water collection and potentially seasonal flooding. So choose your plants appropriately. Lots of times grasses work well in there, and there are definitely plants that work within the bottom of the basin, because here it's rocks, so it's not really planted out, but you can do this with just leave it as mulch and actually put plants in the bottom part. And then as you move up, you put the the plants that want better drainage on the top kind of ledge of the basin or on the higher points, right? And you can even plant kind of in the inclining zone, some medium drainage type plant. Anyway. Okay, so homework will be determining which of the LADWP rebates a client qualifies for and could benefit from. So pay attention to Martha's lecture or presentation. I guess I shouldn't call it a lecture. And she will, and yeah, figure out what makes sense for a certain client or a certain space or garden that you're taking care of. I am gonna do a, let's see, Martha, are you here?
Yes, Claire, I'm here.
How long is your presentation?
Probably no more than 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. Let's do then like a 10-minute break. Actually, you guys, I think last time there was a lot of questions for Martha, so I want to make sure to give her plenty of time. So let's just stick with 5. Sorry, guys, 5 minutes. So that's 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So at 6:20, let's do 6:25. So it's easy. We'll come back and Martha will talk about the rebates. So 6:25, guys. I will read the chat too. Hi, Martha. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Claire.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here too.
I'll look at some of the chats, guys, and see if I can. Let's see. With overwatering, can you encourage more pests? Absolutely. Samantha, definitely overwatering can encourage more pests. Actually, a lot of times with aphids, that's from overwatering. Pests are just looking for the niche, like an open niche to fill, right? So if you're overwatering stuff, sometimes you can see aphids, but also, pests could be in the term of, in the case of like root rots and fungal problems in your soil. So definitely can. Yeah, Drew, you basically, you answered that yourself. Perfect. I guess I'm reading these in real time. So ETO basically represents the evapotranspiration rate from a reference surface not short of water. Not a reference surface, but a reference crop, because ETO is both the loss of water through the soil and the loss of water through the plant. So it's like a combo, a reference crop. So yes, but other than that, your sentence is correct. So rate from a reference crop not short of water. So a very well watered crop. This is research to help plan your water schedule. I don't know when that was said, so I'm not sure what that's referring to. And then access to the PowerPoint slides, you guys do get these, they kind of come a few days later, but you definitely get the, the slides, I don't believe you get the PowerPoints, but you do get the video of this. So I don't think you get access to the slides, unfortunately. I can ask about that. Oh, look at that. You guys answer all the questions. Brenda sends out the recording links, right?
Claire, when we were working on that 1.5 inch infiltration, that's going back to our irrigation schedule. That's like the one irrigation. Like say we were doing summer planting and it says every 4 or 5 days, you would be doing 1.5 inches infiltration every 4 or 5 days.
Well, it's not infiltration, first of all, it's precipitation, just to be like a total dork and correct you. But it just means, it just refers to the actual inches of water you're putting down, right? But that being said, the 4 to 5 days you do early on, you are still, you want to do these kind of deep waterings for sure. But in the first year, especially the 4 to 5 days, I'm assuming you're referring to the one first year establishment chart.
Yeah, with the summer planting.
They don't have to reach that deep because the roots aren't that deep yet, but you still want a pretty deep watering. So you might be talking like 1 inch maybe, as opposed to 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Does that make sense? So you can err on the side of a little bit shallower, but you don't want to be doing like, a 1/4 inch or something like that every 5 days. You definitely always want, the plants to be getting used to these deep waterings. Okay.
And so when you do the summer every 21 days, that's that inch and a half.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. That's the 1.5 inches. That's also what's going to be like considered a deep watering that gets down about 18 inches. I mean, it does depend on your soil and all the things. This is just
Okay.
the general thing. But in some cases, if you have really deep rooted stuff or, you know, maybe a sandier soil, you could do 2 inches. So that's like a kind of general rule of thumb for most soils and for, yeah, the one watering per summer or the, you know, every 21 days, but the kind of infrequent summer soak, 1.5 inches is a good thing to aim for sure.
And so if I have clay soil and that you were saying the pause, the
interval irrigation. So yeah.
How long an interval do you just kind of guess? Or
no, this would be where you want to calculate the precipitation rate of your irrigation system. So if it puts out a 1/2 inch per hour, and you could run an hour every day for 3 days, you know, in a row, and that would equal the 1.5. So there is no time I can give you because it's very dependent on the irrigation system.
No, I meant the pause part where you like you burst it.
Oh, the intervals, like the days, you mean? Yeah, I mean, that's something that's, wait, did you say something else?
Well, you were saying like 5 minutes on and 20 minutes off, or 5, you know, the 20 minutes. Like,
yes, so this is going to depend on kind of the like LADWP watering restrictions and you trying to figure out what works. So some people, especially if you have a sandy soil, you could do the intervals all in one day and water your 1.5 inches in one day if your soil doesn't run off and if your water doesn't, you know, there's no runoff and it's absorbing it. But say you have a clay soil and it's not absorbing all of that, then you would actually break those intervals up into being like every day. So instead of doing the, you know, 20 minutes, you'd be like, okay, I do 5 minutes today, another 5 minutes, or maybe 2 5-minute intervals in one day, 2 5-minute intervals in another day. You know, it's kind of like, you know, making it work, I guess. I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, 6:23. So yeah, guys, you should definitely sign up for the pruning workshop if you can make it. I know some of you can't, but it's equally as great as the irrigation one. And I've heard from both classes, people love the practicums, but the pruning one is really, really helpful because I feel like particularly irrigation too, but particularly pruning is hard to explain on PowerPoint, and just it's so much easier to like see it in person. So if you can make it, I really recommend it. I know last class, Catherine taught it. She's really, really good. And I'm not sure who's teaching it this one, but once I know, I'll let you guys know. But either way, everyone they usually have for them are super, super knowledgeable. So if you can make it, it is the 29th. So it would be the Saturday after our last class. So we'll have the Friday, the 28th, and then it would be the Saturday after that. So I just want to push that because it's such a good class. Okay, so it's 6:25. I'm gonna go with Martha. Martha is a water conservation specialist with LADWP, and she is gonna talk about all the rebates. And there's plenty of times for questions also after her talk, so don't worry. I'm sure you could interrupt her too. I'm sure she doesn't mind, but yeah, Martha, welcome, Martha Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Clara. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Definitely, if you want to ask the questions, if not, if you can hold them to the end, that would be great. So everybody can write down my answers. I am a water conservation specialist. I pretty much focus on the rebates for residential and commercial. And today I'm going to focus on our outdoor landscape rebates. You can always email us at waterconservation@ladwp.com. Any questions that don't get answered here, you can please contact me there and I will help you out. next,
Oops,
please. Sorry.
did I get ahead?
Nope, this is fine.
Okay,
Nope, now you went ahead.
I think I'm on a delay. Hold on a second. Oh, wow. Okay, here we are. Got it.
Nope. You went too far. Other, no? Okay. All right, this is
Sorry.
correct. So I'm going to talk to you about, I need to clarify for the purposes of our water conservation rebates, I'm going to define what we consider residential and commercial. So for residential, we define it as a single family dwelling or 1 to 4 multifamily dwelling units. So a duplex, triplex, fourplex would be considered residential, and you have to apply as a residential customer. For commercial, we define it as commercial, industrial, institutional, and any multifamily dwelling of 5 or more units. So anything 1 to 4, residential, commercial, 5 or more for multifamily. Next. So for residential, here is the landscape rebates that I'm going to go over. The weather-based irrigation controller, the soil moisture sensor, rotating nozzles, rain barrel or cistern, and the turf replacement program. Next. So for all of our rebates are menu based. So there is qualifying list of models for all of them except the rain barrel and cistern. For the irrigation controller, for the rotating nozzles, all of those have a list of qualifying models. And I really recommend that you download the list or that you look something up before you purchase it. So for weather-based irrigation controllers for residential, the rebate can be up to $200. If it's greater than an acre, then you can qualify for a rebate of $35 per station. For soil moisture sensor, you must include a sensor, calibrator, and an irrigation controller. The rebate is the same, up to $200 and $35 per station if it's greater than 1 acre. Now, it does say up to $200, which means if you buy something for $100 and the receipt shows $100, you're only going to get 100. So if you are doing contract work and you have a customer, you might have bought it for 100, but you might want to create your own receipt to maximize the rebate for the customer. And you're going to charge them more because you're going to, that's just part of being a contractor and doing business. Okay. I'm not saying to lie, it's just this part of business. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. Okay. Next slide. So here is the rebates for rotating nozzles. There is a qualifying list, like I mentioned. The minimum purchase is 30 nozzles, and the rebate is up to $6 per nozzle. Rain barrel or cistern, the rain barrel rebate is up to $50 per barrel, limit to minimum 50 gallons, and the cistern is minimum 200 gallons. The rebate varies depending on the size of the cistern from 300, 400 to 500, limit 1. Now, one important thing is the rain barrel and cistern cannot be combined. You can only apply for one or the other. You can't apply for both. Next. All right, I skipped over turf replacement program for residential because I'm going to combine them both, the residential and commercial, after I go through the rebates for the landscape. So for commercial, pretty much similar rebates: weather-based irrigation controller, soil moisture sensor, rotating nozzles, large rotary nozzle retrofit, in-stem flow regulator, and the turf replacement program. Next.
I'm sorry. There it is.
No problem. As long as it shows, even if it takes a while. Oh,
Right.
can you go back one? There you go. All right, so for commercial weather-based irrigation controller, for commercial, it's actually per station as opposed to per device. For commercial, it's $50 per station, regardless of the size of the property. Soil moisture sensor must include sensor, calibrator, and irrigation controller, also $50 per station. Next. Rotating nozzles, up to $6 per nozzle, minimum 30 nozzles that qualify. And the other one is large rotary nozzle retrofit. Try to say that more than once. So high efficiency nozzle retrofits replace standard plastic nozzles with durable metal nozzles. And this is more for big areas, you know, parks and landscape like that. These are $13 up to $13 per head, 8 head minimum. Okay, next. All right, in-stem flow regulators. The in-stem flow regulator controls water flow in irrigation systems at the sprinkler head. These are up to $2 per device, minimum 25 devices, no maximum. So one important thing that I need to make sure that you understand, for commercial rebates, since they can be a lot larger than residential rebates, you must reserve the funds first. Before you go purchase, before you go installing, before you actually apply, you need to do a reservation of the funds. So all of our rebates are handled through a third-party group, which is SoCal WaterSmart. So you're gonna go to their website, which is there. You'll reserve the funds. And once you get the reservation, you have 60 days. In those 60 days, you will purchase, install, and go back online to complete the application and upload all the documentation needed. Now, I'm saying this as if you're a customer, but you can do all this for a customer as a contractor. The only thing is that you cannot get paid directly. So you can apply for them, you can upload their information, help them out, but ultimately the only one that can get paid is the customer. There is a list, unfortunately at this time it is closed, of certain people that are allowed to get paid, and they've been on that list for a long time. Due to circumstances, they had to close it and remove a lot of people. At this time, they're not accepting any additional applications for contractor direct rebate option, but it's something that you can still sell to the customer as a contractor. Next. I see no pictures, do you?
I see pictures. Does anyone else?
There, they came up.
Oh, I think there's like a really long delay because I'm like waiting and I'm like, I see it, but.
All right, they're there. So now I'm going to go through the turf removal rebate program. Just reference the rebate amounts are a little different. For residential, the LADWP is in partnership with Metropolitan Water District, which is our wholesaler. And together we pay $3 per square foot of grass removed and converted to a drought tolerant landscape. Very important, pre-approval is required prior to removing the grass. The maximum square foot is 5,000 square feet. So for residential, pre-approval is required, $3 per square foot and 5,000 square feet max. And it's actually one project per year you can do. Go ahead, next. Okay, for the commercial, it's similar. However, the rebate is still $3 per square foot, 250 square feet to a maximum of 5,000 square feet. Sorry, 50,000 square feet. After 50,000 square feet, it drops down to $1. And the reason being that, like I said, it is a partnership and Metropolitan only pays up to 50,000 square feet. Anything over that, we have to add, we can do it ourselves. So what we do is we add a dollar from 50,001 square feet to 7 acres. Once again, pre-approval is required prior to removing the grass. Next.
Oh, there we go. It's coming, I swear.
All right, I'm going to go through the terms and conditions. And they're pretty much the same for both. In order for your project to be approved, the following must be met. All turf must be removed in the project area and covered with weed barrier material, preferably organic, cardboard, paper, etc. All overhead irrigation must be capped, removed, or converted to drip irrigation. No overhead irrigation is allowed. I know a lot of native plants require and bloom better with overhead, so you might need to do additional hand watering, especially during plant establishment. All weed barrier material and exposed soil must be covered with at least 3 inches of mulch. Okay, this is very important. We don't want to see any exposed soil. If we see exposed soil, that means you didn't put any type of weed barrier material. there needs to be enough mulch that I can't see what's underneath. Because if I have to go out there, you're going to make me dig and I'm going to see that there's no weed barrier material. So put enough mulch, please. Next. Projects must include one of the following rain capture techniques: rain garden, rain barrel, cistern, infiltration trench, vegetated swale, berm, dry riverbed, grade or retention pond. Projects are allowed a maximum of 25% of the project area to be covered with non-vegetated material, such as pavers, gravel, decomposed granite, decorative rocks, sand, etc. Now, I'm going to have to repeat this one because this is one of the ones that is most commonly missed when people read the terms and conditions. And the terms and conditions can be confusing when you get the pre-approval. So I'm going to focus on this for a little bit. Projects are allowed a maximum of 25% of project area to be pretty much hardscape, okay? Which would be pavers, gravel, rocks, anything like that. 25% of the project can be that. The rest cannot be that. It cannot be full of gravel. Long time ago, maybe about 5-6 years ago, there was a company, it was allowed full gravel and plants. That is no longer allowed. So please do not make me tell you to remove it because I cannot approve it if it's all rock. So it's very important. If you have any questions before you start putting everything in, email us, we'll help you out. Next one, front yard and backyard projects must include 3 plants per every 100 square feet. Once again, 3 plants for every 100 square feet. LADWP, of course, recommends native, drought tolerant, and California friendly plants. Next. All right, so City of LA, which is the areas that we cover as LADWP. So the City of LA has terms and conditions for the parkway, and we have to include them. And this is one of those other areas that is very important, and we cannot approve you if the parkway is not correct. So the term parkway is defined as the area of the street between the back of the curb and the sidewalk that is typically planted or landscaped. That first one, plants and mulch only, is highlighted because that is the only thing that is allowed in the parkway. Plants and mulch. Plants and mulch. Plants and mulch. I'm so serious. This is very important. So this area does not allow any overhead irrigation for our project, okay? As far as if you have grass, of course, the city allows that. But for this project, it has to be drip irrigation or hand watering. The plants that go on here have to be low growing. They cannot be more than 3 feet tall at maturity. I mean, there's a lot of plants out there that grow less than 3 feet. So that is definitely what we would recommend. This area also is not 3 plants for 100 square feet. And I'm sorry, I don't have it on here. I didn't realize it until now. The parkway has to cover 80% plant coverage at maturity. Okay, 80% plant coverage. So you can't put 2 plants and tell me that's going to cover 80%, because though I'm not a specialist, I don't know that there's a plant that grows that much, depending on the parkway, of course. But there has to be, you know, enough plants to cover 80% of maturity. Maturity is 2 years from now. So when you take your pictures, it might look like the plants are not a lot. Eventually they will fill in. Remember, this is also an area where people park. Okay, so let me tell you what not to do. Next. What is not allowed in the parkway for the turf removal program, okay? Turf or turf-looking grasses, plants with rigid spines or thorns, plants that are poisonous, noxious, or invasive, fruit gardens or vegetable gardens, and any other non-vegetative material, hardscape, which includes gravel, cement, sand, decomposed granite, any of that stuff, or synthetic turf. None of this is allowed. If we see it, we can't approve it. We will ask you to remove it. If you don't remove it, we can approve it. Okay, so please do not put it if you want to get paid. All right, next. How to apply for the turf removal. like I said, pre-approval is required before starting your project. So I know you're anxious to go out there and remove grass, but you need to wait. You need to take a minimum of 5 pictures of the proposed project area showing the front of the house and front yard, and then all of the project areas. They want to see a picture, let's say from the street view, kind of. They want to see that. And then if you want to do the backyard or the parkway or the sides, then those pictures come separately. But one for sure has to be from the front street view. You will need the first page of your LADWP water bill. You will also need a landscape plan, a drawing. Now, if you look at that drawing, and I'm sure it's, it's kind of tiny, but it's crooked, it's not professional. And yours doesn't have to be professional. You can just draw a rectangle, a square, put little X's where your plants are going to be. If you know what kind of plants you're going to put, great. Put on there, you're going to put mulch. If you're going to put rock, you're only doing 25%. Maybe you're doing a little dry riverbed. Put rock there. You can put that on your little guide there. And like I said, it doesn't have to be professional. We're not going to hold you to it, but we are going to review them and make sure that you're in compliance. So if we show all gravel on there, most likely we're going to be contacting you to say, this is not going to get approved. You might want to consider changing it. All right, next. All right, applying for turf removal. So you will go to SoCalWaterSmart.com to apply. You will need to register with your email and create a password. If you have, pretty much you're going to create a password, user ID and password. You will go to residential or commercial rebates, and then you're going to go to submit your rebate online. Next, I think some arrows are going to come up. Okay, residential, next. Apply for your rebate, next. And the email. Okay, next. So once you get in there, you create your user ID and an application, you'll start an application. And it's basic application information, name, address, email, phone number, account number. Then it's going to ask you for your project information, your project address, the property type. Is it a duplex? Is it a triplex? Is it a school? Lot size, current irrigation type, and square footage of all the project areas. Make sure that you measure your areas ahead of time. We measure it through satellite. If necessary, if we see some type of discrepancy, we will physically go out and measure it. So please measure it yourself. Measure your front yard, backyard, and parkway, whatever your areas are. Select your rain capture technique that will be used. There's a drop-down menu there. You can select what you're going to do. Next. And then after you read all the terms and conditions, which is a lot, you will, there's an option of looking at some sustainable landscape videos, which are offered by Metropolitan Water District. We show you the different types of rain capture techniques, which I'm sure you guys know how to do them, but just in case, or for a customer to look at. Then have sign the application by typing in your name, saving, and submitting. Next. Next. Sorry, I forgot there was a delay. All right, so after you hit save and submit, you will automatically get a notification that tells you that your application has been submitted. That means that you have submitted your plan, you submitted your water and power bill, and you submitted at least 5 pictures of the project area, including your measurements and everything. So SoCal WaterSmart will get this and they will review it. They will review all the information that you have submitted, and it takes 1 to 2 weeks for them to review it. This does not mean that you are approved yet. It just means we got your application, hold on a few weeks and we'll let you know. So don't go and remove your grass yet. You can still wait a couple weeks until you get your approval. Go ahead, next. All right, so you finally get your pre-approval, and to the bottom left, something like that, an email will come. It'll have your application number. It'll say you have been pre-approved. you have 180 days, and it'll give you the date on there as to what day you must finish your project by. 180 days is 6 months. And though that seems like a long time, we have a lot of customers, especially during this time with the pandemic, that request extensions. We have no problem extending something as long as you are working. Things happen in life. Just make sure you contact us before the expiration date. So once again, read the terms and conditions. And this paper to the left is going to actually have terms and conditions for Metropolitan Water District. And then it's going to say, as a customer of LADWP, you must meet the following terms and conditions to make sure that your rebate is approved. And it's pretty much including MWD terms and conditions, except ours are more detailed as to the City of LA requirements. So if you have any questions, once again, there is our email, waterconservation@LADWP, or you can call us. The fastest and easiest, of course, is the email, because we are currently telecommuting. But if you want to leave a message, leave your phone number and we'll get back to you. And from here, you're ready to go. You have 180 days to do your project. Next. All right, so when you are done, you're going to go back to the same webpage. And I'm sorry, I completely, last time I didn't include this. And you're going to pretty much start again. You're going to go back online, upload new pictures, new water bill, and they're going to review your rebate again. It'll come to my office, my group, and we'll review it. And if all the terms and conditions are met, then we'll approve it. In about 8 to 10 weeks, you'll get a check. Here's our contact information for Water Conservation Group. There is our email, our hotline. And if you're applying and you have problems with the SoCal WaterSmart website, or if they send you an email and you need to reply or need to talk to somebody, there's their website and there is their hotline. Because if you're stuck on an application, there's nothing I can do. It's not our website. So I would refer you to them and they would be able to assist you. All right, I think that's it, but go ahead and hit next. All right, here's my contact information, and I am ready for questions.
Cool. So guys, feel free to throw questions in the chat, or probably easiest to just unmute yourself and ask Martha directly.
Hi, Martha. Earlier in the talk, you mentioned about a wait list for payments. I didn't understand who's on that wait list. What was that you were talking about? I must have missed the detail.
I don't recall saying anything about a wait list. I mean, from start to finish, you're going to, whether you're getting pre-approved for something, you're going to have to wait to make sure that you get the pre-approval. You will be notified once it has been approved, and then you'll have to wait for the payment, but there is no wait list. I don't know that I mentioned that.
Okay, thank you. I must have misunderstood. And also you mentioned about the island area. I lived in the city of Los Angeles my entire life, 29 years, just kidding. We've never touched the, you call it the Parkway. We've never touched the island or Parkway because that's a city land. Is that, is it mandatory that you include the Parkway or island in your plan if one exists?
No. If you want to do the turf removal program for the Parkway, you can, but there's specific
to add extra square footage or something.
Well, I mean,
okay.
technically, it's not your area. You are correct. It's the city's, but if you think about it, you're the one that's responsible for it. So that grass out there, you're watering it. So if you wanted to change it to a drought tolerant landscape, you can, but you have to abide by the terms and conditions. So, but yes, you don't have to include it. You can just do your front yard or your side yards or your backyard and just leave the Parkway alone.
Okay, and about pre-removal of lawns or turf. In our case, we never removed a lawn or a turf, but we eliminated the irrigation and the lawn died. And we were told, this is a kind of a personal, this is off. We were told that we were not eligible because we didn't have a lawn.
Correct.
Do we have to, if I start watering it again, it will be there for my photos?
That is correct. So ultimately, it is a water saving program. We are water conservation. The main purpose of this program is to get those green, lush lawns and replace them to a drought tolerant native landscape. But
Mhm.
if you had, even if it's yellow lawn, like you just stopped watering a few months ago, they will let that go through. But if it's completely hasn't been watered in probably more than 6 months or a year, or it's just dirt or it's just weeds, it's not really saving us much water. To the contrary, it's going to actually, you're going to use more water because you weren't watering it.
Mm.
So if you want to water it and for picture purposes, you want to do that, I mean, hey, I didn't hear it, you know.
It's been more than 5 years. It is dirt and weeds, but it would have just been nice to have the option to participate. But and it will remain dirt and weeds because it won't add any value to our house until we're probably ready to sell it.
Okay,
I have a question, Martha.
yes.
And
So, oh, I'm sorry, Molly, finish.
oh, and that will affect the value of the Los Angeles city neighborhoods. That's it. That was just a comment. Okay, sorry.
So Marta, in our front yard, it's all lawn, but our children, we put some swings out there. So underneath where they hit the ground, the grass is dead, but we're still watering it. It's part of the irrigation. So if we applied to replace the front yard, would that be okay?
Most likely it's okay unless that part is all dirt. They might ask you to remove that square footage as far as your measurements. But even if it's, like I said, if it's yellow, like there is signs that there is grass, whether it's, you know, especially under some swings, I think it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is terrace board or vendor board allowed in the parkway? It's like a minimal hardscape.
Mulch and plants.
That okay, so no boarding. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Martha, I think you went over this, but I can't remember. You can't submit a rebate on behalf of a client? Is that true?
You cannot get paid for a client's project. So you can help them out by submitting the application and being the main contact and all that. But as far as the payment goes, unless you're part of that contractor direct rebate option, which most likely you're not, like I said, it's been people that have been on there for over 5-6 years, you would not be able to get paid directly. So you should definitely have some type of agreement or contract with your customer ahead of time as to how your payment is going to be received.
Right, so the check is always made out to whoever's name is on the water bill.
Correct.
Okay.
Or if it's the owner and they have a tenant, usually
Right.
the owner, of course, is paying for the project, so they will get the rebate, even though the application might be under. No, usually we'll allow the owner to apply, even though they're not, the water bill is not in their name.
Got it. Jacob, you have your hand up. Do you want to go ahead and shout your question out?
Yeah, hey Martha.
Hey, Jacob.
Can you explain to us if we do all the paperwork properly for as a homeowner, what is the length of time? I think that's been one of the things we've dealt with in our office for people calling, and we do tell them it's really on them and doing the paperwork properly and listening to what the directions you give them, Martha. But if we did everything properly, what is from start to finish the average amount of time to get approved, submit my stuff, and get a rebate check?
So to get approved, it's usually pre-approved. It's 1 to 2 weeks from the time that you submit your bill, your application, pictures, and your plan. So it's about maximum 2 weeks. From there, you have 6 months. So that part is going to be however long you do it yourself, you hire somebody. I mean, there's, you know, that company that came 5-6 years ago, they literally were there one day, but they also had 20-30 workers and were throwing gravel and plants. Most likely that's not going to happen in your project. And like I said, a lot of people, if they're doing it themselves, they do take the 6 months, and that's a long time. And that's, you know, an investment that you don't want me to deny. That's why I want you to know the terms and conditions. Pretty much, let's say 4 to 5 months, I would think is the average. once you finish your project and you upload your new pictures, your new bill, and I think that's all you have to upload, and just make sure your measurements are still the same. That's going to be another 2 weeks from SoCal WaterSmart to review the paperwork. What they do from that point is they send it to my office, and somebody from my group will review it. And that's usually probably no more than a week before we review it. And hopefully everything is good. If not, you're going to get an email from us. And I'm going to warn you that it might be a little scary email. The email might say your project has been not denied, has been changed to 0. And the reason we do this is because we want you to call us back. We want to work with you. And if we say we reduced it to, you know, I don't know, we reduced 100 square feet or 200 or whatever the case may be, you might not call us back. So we want to make contact with you. So we will say we reduced it to 0. Trust me, people call back. Maybe not so happy, but we'll eventually talk to them and explain what was wrong. And we do tell them on the terms and conditions, and we tell them on the email that we sent what was wrong. And when they call us, like I said, we have 30 days to review it and either approve it or deny it. So if we need to, we'll put it on hold and we'll work with you. And hopefully nothing is wrong. That would be great. If nothing is wrong, once we get it within a week, we'll approve it. It goes back to SoCal WaterSmart. From that point, it takes 8 to 10 weeks for you to get a check. So from when we approve it, it takes 8 to 10 weeks to get a check. So
How long did you say your approval takes?
my office approval usually takes about 1 week if nothing is found to be wrong, which I can tell you about 90% of the projects have something wrong.
Thank you, Martha. And I did have a comment for Molly. So Molly, the parkway in front of your home is the responsibility of the property owner. It's a shared kind of responsibility with the city and the property owner, but maintenance is the responsibility of the property owner. So common misconception. The other thing is just most importantly, people don't realize is, let's say it's not maintained properly and I'm walking by your house, Molly, and I trip and fall on your parkway or the sidewalk. Homeowners also have liability in those areas. So it's important that people do maintain it. If there is damage or something going on, that you do report it, and then you maintain those records that you reported some damage. But
We've been reporting the trees being overgrown and blocking one direction of a 2-direction street for 9 months. The trees were recently trimmed with the debris left behind. I'm a 56-year-old woman, and it's not my job to clean the gutters left behind by the tree trimmers. This was the third time in 50 years that the trees have been trimmed by the city. So
I would take
I'm not
pictures,
really
Molly.
afraid of that
No problem.
liability.
I would take pictures. So if tree trimmers left debris behind, that's not supposed to happen. If they were the city ones. If not, if they're private, that's different. But and then maybe I can contact your council member as well. So if 311 is not working and you're reporting it, I would definitely contact your council member and ask them for some assistance. And I shouldn't come to that going to council offices, but if our city departments aren't performing the way they should, that's where we come in. But Martha and DWP are amazing. I'm gonna point that out. But if my tree trimmers through Bureau of Street Services or not, let us know. I work for Councilman Joe Buscaino. So we're the 15th council district. So if it's in my district, you email me. If it's someone else, you email that council person.
I want to get this, we have a hand up. I want to get that in. You want to ask your question to Martha before, I don't want to lose the time, but what did I say if you want to?
Right, yeah, hi. I just for curiosity's sake, my question is, when they were putting all that gravel stuff in, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So now you say that they can't do it. So did the city decide that all that gravel was reflecting too much heat? What was the reason that they stopped that? I'm just curious as a landscaper.
That is one of the reasons. There was environmentalists that talked to our board and to the mayor, and they came to the agreement that it was better to not do it for the heat factor effect. And just people weren't really maintaining it as, because I mean, it's a different maintenance than grass. I mean, you're pulling weeds, So we're hoping that this will change that.
Yay, yay, I'm glad. Yeah, thank you.
See, change happens, guys. If there's any more questions for Martha, this is your last chance. No, it's not, because you have her email, but last chance in person if you guys want to shout out any more questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here. Any other stuff?
Well, make sure you take the email. You can put attention Martha, or you can have just ask your questions. Everyone in my staff will be able to assist you. So please, we rather hear from you before than after. So ask away.
Cool. Well, thank you, Martha. And you guys next week, no, this week, we'll be talking next class about weeding and integrated pest management. So that will be Friday's lecture. And yeah, your homework is figuring out the rebate that makes sense for a garden that you're maintaining. And yeah, I guess that's it, unless we have any questions. And we'll see you same time Friday. And thank you so much, Martha, again, for coming and telling us all about the rebates.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Have
No
a good
problem.
night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Text me. I'm in a meeting.
Okay, bye, guys. Thanks, Lloyd.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.